Alright, y'all, I'm back with part two. This is part two of the biblical creation story versus the Anunnaki creation story. Where we left off, we was talking about the serpent, and we was talking about the multiple gods and all of, how it gives multiple biblical references of, God being plural throughout the Bible, and first we went through Enki and Enlil and their roles, as brothers, and the roles that they play on a cosmic level, and on the earthly plane as well, versus all the plural parts of the biblical creation story were a reference to gods with an S, Like it said in Genesis 1, verse 26, then God said, let us create man in our image. Like I said before, keywords in that passage is let us, referring to this is multiple of us. In our. As a group. Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. Then the Lord said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Genesis 11:7. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Then to Isaiah 6:8, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And like I was saying, I was breaking down how Elohim is plural, it's more than one. So Hebrew Elohim would be, gods with an S. Then you have Netaru in the Egyptian culture, which would be the Elohim. Then you have the it's another name that they're called throughout history. You got the each culture, they have their own pantheon of deities, Some people compare them to fallen angels, but remember, the fallen angels were Elohim too. They were B'nai Elohim, They were all gods, But they all had different roles. So in these different roles, they have different attributes and abilities, and one can counterbalance the other, One might have an authoritative position on this plane, where the other one will have one on this plane, but each way, you have in polarity and duality, you have balance and counterbalance. You have an opposite, but opposites are the same thing, but just different in degrees, as it tells us in the book, The Three Initiatives, and it breaks down the 7 Hermetic principles. Let me show you something real quick. This book right here is the 3 Initiatives. This breaks down the 7 Hermetic principles and duality. That's why it's key to know those 7 Hermetic principles, because it gives you the ideology of creation, the mind state of creation. So, it's 2 sides to everything, it's triads and everything, collectives, 2 or more gather, this spirit is present, this force field is present, or it becomes this congregation or this council, Like I said, Psalms 82 says, the Most High judgeth in the congregation of gods. Ye are all gods and children of the Most High, but you all still die like mere men. So that part when it says ye will die like mere men, this is when we go back to Genesis 3 and chapter 3, verse 22 when it says, "Then the Lord God said, look, the human beings have become like us. They have become like us, knowing both good and evil. What if they reach out, take fruit from the tree of life and eat it? Then they will live forever." Listen to this. Then they will live forever. So the Lord God banished them from the Garden of Eden and sent Adam out to cultivate the ground from which he had been made. So you see this. So it basically telling him, like the serpent already told him over here in chapter 3 verse 4. Chapter 3 verse 2 down to verse 7, it says, "Of course we may eat from the tree in the garden." The woman replied, "It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die." 4, it says, "You won't die." The serpent replied to the woman, "God knows that your eyes will be open as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil." The woman was convinced. She saw the tree was beautiful and its fruit looks delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. Listen to the key words: the wisdom that it would give her. Delicious. And she wanted the wisdom it would give her, so she took some of its fruit and ate it, and she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment their eyes were open, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. So remember, that's why you gotta watch part 1. If you ain't watched part 1 of this video, go back and watch part 1. But right here, we breaking down Enki and Enlil. I was telling everybody the attributes of, Enki. These are his attributes and the things that he deals with as far as when it comes to wisdom. It says, Enki serves as a wise counselor. Often, counters are softened in Enlil's commands with clever solutions. Enki, he presides over water, fresh water, springs, Absu, creation, fertility, magic, wisdom, and craftsmanship. It also states that he deals with cleverness. Like I was showing y'all on this other chart, how, these beings in each culture, they would call a different name, from the Elohim to Nebru, so on and so on. But even in the South American culture, in the Mayan culture, that's why you'll see these pyramids. The ziggurats, you first originally see them in Mesopotamia, which was called Sumer, Samaria, Babylon, Acadia, Persia. This name's been changed so many times, but it's the same geographical region, which you would know as Iraq today, which also, this is what this other book I have goes into. This shows you, this is what the U.S. government really went into Iraq for. They were going to see something to do with stargates, giants, and something else that was going on over there. And, they just, they did a smoke screen, make you think something is one thing, but it's really a whole nother agenda, just like everything else under the deception of humanity that they've created and brought into existence. But like I was saying, you'll see them same ziggurat pyramids as you see in Egypt, Mesopotamia, Babylon, all the way to South America, where the Mayan tradition, where you get the god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god of the Mayan mythology. Kukulkan is one of the most powerful and influential deities in ancient beliefs, representing wisdom. Again, wind, water twice, same as Enki, and life itself, creation, just like Enki. Its feathered serpent bridges the earthly and divine. in Aztec, the same god is known as Quetzalcoatl, the bringer of knowledge and civilization. So the same attributes as Enki in the Sumerian creation story, same attributes as the serpent in the garden that didn't lie to Eve but actually told her the truth, versus when in the beginning, the first part in Genesis 1 verse 26, then God said, let us create human beings in our image to be like us. So we want you to be like us. We created you in our image to be like us. But then over here, you see a great divide. Another entity says basically, no, don't get wisdom and don't be like us or be like us. And then you got another one saying like, whoa, something's contradicting over here. When you get over to 3 verse 22, then the Lord God said, look, the human beings have become like us. Well, now it's like a shock, like, whoa, their eyes is open, they have become like us. But it just said that God was in the garden and told him, like, well, how did you become mindful and aware of this? Oh, you ate from that tree, you got this wisdom. We got to stop this. We got to banish you out of here, because then, you eat from this, and that, then you're going to have ever, you're going to live forever. You will live forever. You're kind of like us, So, see, this is where the great divide. That's why it's key to know the Enki in the story. That's very vital. So, as you see right here in Genesis 3 verse 4, it said the serpent replied to the woman, God knows that your eyes will be open as soon as you eat. You see how we seen Kulakan, the serpent deity, deals with wisdom, and it tells you that Eve had wanted this wisdom. So this is where we're going to go into the apocalypse of Abraham. So I kind of even, in the first video, I gave you names of biblical figures and their translated names, what they would have been called in these other cultures. It's like the Bible, and then I told you how it shows you in the first part of Genesis where it's talking about gold. Why is it referring to gold in this specific place? And crystals. Crystals and gold, these specific earthly elements are very key, because, the gold in the Annunaki creation story, that's what it was all about. Them coming here to find gold to shoot into the upper atmosphere of their planet that was decaying and failing. The veil was breaking, and I guess a certain kind of radiation was coming in, and these gold particles were used. They knew that it can block this and preserve this or that. And Mars was one of the stations where they were processing this gold and sending it back to Nibiru. And I told you the whole story about Marduk. What's his name? Allah. What is his name? Alalu, that was imprisoned, and then he was imprisoned to Mars, buried on Mars, and one of the other Anunnaki went there, and when he died, buried him in a tomb. That's why you see the face on Mars. But the wing-feathered serpent, I told you about the ziggurats, Babylon, pyramids in Egypt, all the way to South America with you got Khan, the feathered serpent, deity of Mayans, deals with waters, creations, wisdom, the same as the serpent in the Bible, which I'm telling you, these all go back to the same entities. So now we're going to go into the book of the Apocalypse of Abraham, so we get more in-depth details of what was actually going on in that garden. Now you see that it says there's a feathered winged serpent in the South American culture under that god, right? So when we get over here to here, it's going to break this down more about this feathered serpent, or these wings on this specific serpent being. Or was it actually a snake, or was it actually a standing upright being, like a human being, but just the form of a serpent with wings? But we're going to see, because each book has a little piece of the puzzle. That's why they don't want you going to these books. But look at this, in this part 2 right here. We're going to go over here. So this book extends from Genesis 15, when he said, we fasted 40 days, 40 nights. This breaks all the real details down. He goes up in the spirit, and he's giving these revelations of, what will happen to the people that of the Most High that will come of his lineage and his seed, and what will be their fate, in the beginning of this age and the end of the age. And he's able to go back in time in the Akashic Records, because the Akashic Records deals with everything that is, was, and will be, and see through pictures and frames or crystal ball, however they do it. But it kind of breaks down the same thing, just like they got the tablets of destiny in the Anunnaki story, and they can see past, present, future, because the destiny is something that's ordained, it's going to happen one way or the other. That's why they can foresee what is to come. But right here it says the fall of man sequel. It says, and I said, O eternal mighty one, what is this picture of the creatures? And he said to me, this is my will with regard to those who exist in the divine world. Counsel. Here we see the word counsel again. It seems well pleased before my sight. And then afterwards I gave commandment to them through my word, and it came to pass, whatever I had determined to be was already planned beforehand in this picture. And it stood before me ere it was created, as thou hast seen. And I said, O Lord, mighty and eternal, who are the people in this picture on this side and on that? And he said to me, these which are on the left side are the multitude of the peoples which have formerly been in existence, and which are after the destined. See, right here it says, these are after the destined. Remember in the annunaki story, it talks about tablets of destiny. So here it's talking about destiny. Y'all look at the wordplay. Words are spells. It's all, remember, languages were confused. So, there's a separation. Who's the author of confusion? There's ones that want to separate and cause confusion. So if it's an author of confusion, it's being done purposely for a reason. So now you got to put the pieces to the puzzle back together. It says, which are after these destined, some for judgment and restoration. So you have judgment and salvation here. Judgment and restoration. Others for vengeance and destruction at the end of the world. But these which are on the right side of the picture, they are the people set apart from me, of the peoples with Azazel. So they are the people set apart from me, of the people with Azazel. So there's another people that they're under another god, deity, fallen one, whatever you want to call it, but it's still God, because it has these abilities and power to have this astrological influence over man, as it talks about in the 6th and 7th book of Moses. These are they. If you follow me long enough, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you go on my YouTube channel, New Jeru Blue, you'll see that I have this more in-depth details on the video. I actually went through this whole book a couple times. When I first started making my YouTube videos years ago, and recently, I went through this whole breakdown again. So I'm trying to start making videos and put things in categories and perspective as a series, so they're not just scattered topics all over the place. So I'm trying to, forgive me for that, but I'm trying to get better with that. But stick with me here. Follow, connect the dots, put the pattern together. Remember, we was just in the book of Genesis, talking about the serpent in the garden, wisdom, eating of this tree, and, the different God perceptions, and how these couple verses, just how it keeps referring to us, and then it sounds like something is off because it's something that was already ordained in agreement. Then somebody tried to put a stop to it, and then something went through, and then they got this specific ability, and then before we allow them to get any other abilities and awareness or this lifespan, we got to cut them off and banish them out the scar. So now we're going to the garden right now, and we're going to see exactly what that fruit actually was that was in the garden. We already went to the Mayans, where what's his name? Kukulkan the feathered serpent deity, has the same attributes as Enki in the Anunnaki story, which has the same attributes as the serpent that did not lie to Eve in the Genesis story. So, which in Hebrew would be Bereshith in the beginning. So it's in the beginning. This is actually not the beginning. This is like the second part, because the beginning there was a war in heaven. I'm going to do a video on that, and then I'm going to go into the separation of the waters, dark lightness, spirit hovering over the deep, because that gets deep too. But back to this. It says, these are they. Yeah, it all makes sense when you start connecting these puzzles, and you can actually paint a vivid picture, which I'm trying to do right now. These are they whom I have ordained to be born of thee, and to be called my people. These are the set apart people. You know, it talks about in the beginning, it says, set apart people above all people. You know, the chosen people, the Israelites. You know, Israelites is three names in that: Isis, Ra, and El. You know, you break it down, you do the math. Israelites, they were in Egypt. Ra, sun, central star of the universe, the light giver. So what you think of gods and those are just attributes of nature, archetypes of nature deities, which they also had physical deities that you would see like dolphin, all these other ones, which were from the Anunnaki lineage, which would have been Neteru. Those Neteru was the gods, you know, but everything else was just symbology and archetypes like Ra, sun god, you know, then you got the El, and then you have Isis. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother story. But look, and remember, Israel, their name didn't come about until Jacob fought with an angel. And look at the place where he fought with this angel. God is eternal, right? Why did Jacob fight with an angel at a place that he named Pineal? Come on now. What's Pineal? Third eye. Third eye. Look, this is a singing bowl, right? This is the third eye symbol. Third eye. Third eye looks like a pine cone. That's why it comes from the word pineal. You know, but pineal, when you go on the third eye chart, it deals with intuition. Intuition is inner essence. Intuition means abilities beyond this physical realm. So when you come in contact with an angel, that means you're going somewhere within, you're in some type of deep state, you know, to where it's though within your subconscious is becoming conscious at this point. And you're getting these downloads to a point to where it's you're not altered with any type of sorcery, to where it's which I broke that down in the last part one of what sorcery actually really is. It's not what you think, but you're not altered with to where so your pineal gland is calcified to where so you can't tap into each realm, you know. And there's a time that we know that God is face is turned towards us, to where so these forces are more favorable to us and we'll get results faster. There's times where Most High turns his face away and he's not dealing with these people, you know. Another people are getting their blessing at this time. But to his people, as it's talking about it here, as it's being broken down to Abraham, as we're talking about this serpent, wisdom, waters. Remember those key things: feathered serpent, Kukulkan, South America, pyramid, ziggurats, same as Neteru, Egypt, same as, you know, Anunnaki, the ones that came down from the sky, to Kai, planet Earth, which came from Tiamat, which became Earth through Marduk, the war in heaven, and, you know, the clash of Marduk and Tiamat, and, you know, the breaking off of the planet, and, you know, their satellites or their special weapons, which was Kengus, was of Tiamat's. Oh, I love this, breaking this down. But yeah, this is where we get to the similarities. So, these are they whom I have ordained to be born of thee, to be called my people. Now, look again in the picture. Who is it who seduced Eve, and what is the fruit of the tree? And thou wilt know what there shall be, and how it shall be to thy seed among the people at the end of the days of the age. See how it says end of days and end of the age. End of the age, when it says end of the age, that means the end of a cycle. If it says the end of the world, that means utter destruction. Or a world could be, it can have a twofold, threefold moon. Just like it said, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. But it could have been talking about that world within their world, their tradition, their heritage, their culture is their world. That's what they're subject to. So it doesn't always mean that it's talking about the whole world. And just like age and world, they interchangeable, like at the end of a cycle, end of an age, or end of a world. You know what I'm saying? But you read this stuff long enough, you'll catch on to these patterns of what it's saying, So people like to twist a lot of things out of context. But the more you read, what's talking about this? Talking about everybody. It can mean that, but it can mean this. But you got to follow the storyline and the pattern, and you'll see, what it's talking about when it starts saying these kind of things. The end of the age, so far as thou canst not understand, I will make known to thee. My spirits are here. Get back to what I was saying. Understand, I will make known to thee, for thou art well pleasing in my sight, and I will tell thee what is kept in my heart. And I looked into the picture, and my eyes ran to the side of the Garden of Eden, and I saw there a man very great in height, and fearful in breadth, and incomparable in aspect, embracing a woman who likewise approximated to the aspect and shape of the man. And they were standing under a tree of the Garden of Eden. Now, key word, now pay attention here. And the fruit of this tree was like the appearance of a bunch of grapes of the vine. So you ever go into a liquor store, wine and spirits, say you get the wine, that alcohol brings out them spirits, because that alcohol, if in certain African cultures, you ever heard of libations? That you pour out for the spirits, or how people are, I'm just pouring out this liquor for my dead homies or my dead relatives. That's actually a form of libations. It's an actual ancestral tradition, which a lot of people think, oh, that's stupid. But see, that's where Kasha come into play. People do things they don't even realize they're doing it, but they actually doing stuff of their ancestral lineage, So it says a bunch of grapes of a vine. So everybody thinks that this fruit on the tree was an apple, but in all reality, it was a grape. It's grapevine. I heard through the grapevine. That forbidden fruit, as you see on the wine bottles in liquor stores. I tell you, it's right there in plain sight in your face, but it never said nowhere in the Bible that the fruit was an apple. But that's the narrative that everybody's running with. Just like if everybody just really read closely what it's saying in there, they'll realize, who's somebody's tricking somebody here. And religion is the biggest scapegoat and mascot to do so. And it tells you in the book of Revelation, Satan deceived the whole world. But let's finish going, because this is key part. Remember, we deal with wing-feathered serpent, Kukulkan, which has the same attributes as Enki in the Bible, and the same as the serpent in here. So it tells you who each deity is, and then after this, you see that it was another God that came and walking through the garden and said, how did you become dressed? But another entity told him, like, oh, you'd be like us if you have, good and evil. That's a good thing. That's wisdom. Because knowing both sides of duality is actually wisdom. That's what wisdom is, It's not a one-sided thing. I don't know what church, what God y'all worshiping and told y'all that, but, think like, oh, everything is good. It's all good. Anything we don't comprehend or we're taught is the devil. What? How do you just come to the conclusion? Because something that might be a little spookism because you don't understand it or something. But if you were taught that growing up and, you know, it was a natural thing to you, but nothing ever been spooky about it because you would have known that was a natural thing. So once it gets implemented in your life, the first thing you say, because the church program is the devil. Come on now. The church tell you it's an apple, but it was never an apple. Come on now. The church tell you it's just one God, or I'm a jealous God, thou shalt not kill, but go into this village and slay every man, woman, and child. But, oh, it's the same God, you know? They don't tell you the distinctions of this contradiction. But tell you in a certain time that elect will be woken up and there will be a restoration period of certain types of knowledge. And it will come back to the phone. Now, look at this. It says, a bunch of grapes of the vine, and behind the tree was a standing as it were a serpent in form. It was standing as it was a serpent in form, having hands and feet like a man's, and wings on its shoulders, 6 on the right side and 6 on the left. And they were holding the grapes of the tree in their hands, and both were eating it, whom I had seen embracing. And I said, who are these mutually embracing, or who is this who is between them, and what is the fruit which they are eating? Almighty Eternal One. Key words here. Almighty Eternal One. Remember when Jacob fought with an angel and his name became Israel? Where did he name that place? Pineal. So if the Bible is written in metaphors, allegories, parables, and figurative language, that means that it's a book of codes. And if it's a book of codes, it has to be decoded with its proper text. That means it was taken from something else and then put into these riddles for you. So how are you supposed to understand something that you'd only have half of the story? You're not even dealing with a full deck. Religion got so many denominations. Tell you right in the Bible, devil's job is to kill, steal, and destroy. Divide and conquer. So if you divide it with all these different denominations, all these different religions, you know, all these different languages, all these different things, you know, deceiveth the whole world. What better way to deceive the whole world? We know the word, but just switch word of gods, but switch it up and then turn it into a singular one and just make a whole bunch of verses that contradict yourself because you're not telling you the full story. You don't know this guy from that guy, you know, or what's really at play here, you know? Satan deceived the whole world. But it says, and I said, who are these mutually embracing, or who is this who is between them, or what is the fruit which they are eating? Almighty Eternal One, Eternal One. Jacob wrestled with the angel. His name was changed to Israel. Isis Ra now. He named that place Pineal. Pineal of all places. Pineal, third eye, Kether. What does it say right here on this tree of life? Right here. It says crown. Kether. What is Kether? Pineal. Kether, crown. Man, y'all follow me, y'all learn a thing or two. This is gonna be the second video I post, which is part 2 on, you know, I'm like I said earlier, I'm expanding my horizons. I'm going to TikTok now. Ain't y'all proud of me? It said, who are these mutually embracing? Who is this who is between them? And what is the fruit which they are eating? Like I told you, the church was an apple. People told an apple. Nobody did no research. Nobody ever questioned it. They made up all these theories. That's why you get all these people making all these videos of religion and this, and that. I guarantee you I can break that thing down tenfold in every way. It don't matter what religion comes to me, a denomination, because guess what? I can translate all of them. I actually take the time to do it. Now look at this. This shows you something right here. Just to show you. This is just one book. I have multiple notebooks. As you see over there, I got a little mini library. I got multiple notebooks. They all filled up with information. But this just goes back. Look. This is when I first taught myself how to speak Hebrew. But look, this is all verses and scriptures that I memorized by heart early on in the game. Then I found all the historical records to go with them. This is when I taught myself how to write in Hebrew. This is when I start defining the words. This is before I even had any of the books to do so, you know? I did this. I took the time. I wrote this stuff out. I went through every blog, web page, every source I could come up with and found it because that's what I wanted to do, you know? And there's still so much more to be figured out. People probably never even heard of this book, the Odes of Solomon, Psalms of Solomon, other Psalms, you know, the complete Dead Sea Scrolls, you know, apocryphal texts, the Book of Jubilees, Jasher. There's so many other things, you know, and then the Biblical Dictionary, then the Hebrew Dictionary, breaking these words there. But let's keep going a little bit. You see how it said that there was a serpent that stood up like a man. What would we know something like that as today? They would call that something a draconian, reptilian. But if you look at some of these Anunnaki texts, some people say some of them are part reptilian and part Anunnaki, but the same hierarchy of, you know, you ever heard of 24 galactic races, galactic multiple beings of high sorts, you know? But then you have, the Bible says 24 elders. Next time one of your Christian pastors or somebody try to tell you crystals is of the devil and witchcraft, look at the first opening verse of the Bible when it's talking about the Garden of Eden, when it's talking about gold, and then start breaking down Pacific crystal stones. Look at when it goes into the breastplates of Aaron and how each Pacific crystal and gemstone signifies each of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then go into the Revelation when it goes into New Jerusalem of how this place was built with gold and crystals, just like it states in the opening part of the Bible, why these elements are so key. They don't want to tell you because gold, it actually, you know, just like I was telling you in another video, ormus gold. By the time it comes, calcifies the pineal gland, makes the cells recharge. That's why the New Jerusalem streets are paved in gold. These crystals, why you think Superman in his chambers, you know, kryptonite, he slept in a crystal chamber because you know why? Because it helps your cells to rejuvenate. Then y'all wonder why I talked about this 1,000-year millennial reign in the Bible. But y'all not really realizing that. When you go back to the Anunnaki story, when it talks about Ningzida, and when Ningzida had to come and alter someone's essence, basically using asa in the Hebrew word, it means cure, healer, you know, they had to be laid on a topaz stone, and for this all to take place, and this someone that was dead was brought back to life. Yeah. So, and like I was saying right there, and like it shows you that Almighty One, this is the human world, Eternal One, and he said this is the human world, this is Adam, this is the desired upon the earth, this is Eve. He who is between them representative ungodliness, their beginning on the way to perdition, even Azazel, you know. But I noticed from reading these texts, so a lot of stuff is in reverse because they make it seem like in religion that the things that were designed to help you or is helping you is the bad things. You know, they'll say it's of the devil, but you know, they say the one doing all the killing is the one that's the righteous and is doing all the good. So it's like somebody is tricking you here, you know. It's not that we got the wrong word. It's that the perspective that is put in, but it's right there in our faces. All we got to do is read it. You feel me? So that's why we got to stay till we show ourselves approved, you know. Seek and we will find. But we going with interpretations and arguing with people with verses that each, you know, like it says in the book of Isaiah, read precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. Everything is supposed to coincide and confirm itself with another verse, or another passage, or another story, that fills in the gaps and the blanks. These people take a passage and they'll run with it and they remix it and then they elaborate on it, but they will not answer facts with facts, even from different cultures, different languages, or translations. That's the problem here. So this is where this great confusion is. These people are the authors of confusion. They're right in your face. You ever heard of a wolf in sheep clothing? They're right there in your face. I heard a pastor talking the other day, talking about, the crystals is of the devil and this and that. It's witchcraft. The church is the biggest witchcraft on the planet. When y'all in there drinking y'all symbolic blood and eating your bodies of Christ, and you're going to church on Sunday, a day of sun worship, instead of the actual Sabbath day. Even though that correlates with Saturn and Saturday and Shabbat, where you get the word Shabbat from, that'd be more of the preferable day if you were following the biblical God anyway, But if you go Sunday, you're going with some other tradition, And it says in Revelation that they will worship the creature more than the creator. It says that anybody that adds into this book, I'm going to add into them the plagues in which I talked about in this book. Anybody that takes away from this book, I'm going to take away from their portion of the book of life. So it looks like there's a lot that was taken away when you go into even texts like these, the book of Jasher. Nobody hears about that or talks about that. The Zohar. Nobody talks about that. When you get into Jubilees, Jasher, somebody took the time and the effort to take all this stuff away. The apocalypse of Elijah. It shows you somebody made, alternate extensive effort to add and take away from the book. So to give you 66 books, but you got 88 something books in the Ethiopian Bible. Then you got all these other books and texts and Dead Sea Scrolls and Enoch and all this other stuff that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that was with the original Bible. So, but I'll tell you right now, in 1928, that's when you seen the Vatican, that's when they start removing apocryphal texts. So it might tell you that the crystals is bad. They lie, you see. This is a living altar right here. Pinnacles, everything. You see stuff from the Native American culture. You see copper, natural elements. You don't see the 7 Moranum candles. You see 9, because it's dealing with 9 ether crystals. Like you see right there, 9 ethers. You'll see everything has a purpose, from 7 Hermetic principles, because everything that is, was, and will be is all connected. Down to chakras, all of it. It's all connected. Now, remember that. Okay? I am I am going to fulfill my duty and due diligence and destiny to become a master teacher that I was sought out and destined to be. This green represents the ether. That ether. Rearrange ether, you'll get the word heart. Heart deals with the heart chakra, which is green. You rearrange the word heart, you'll get the word earth, which is green. I am an earth sign. I am of the earth. I am of Jeb. I am that I am. Deuces. I say. Like, share, subscribe. Spread this message. We are waking up. We are reviving. See? When the eyes start to glowing, they're 2 different colors. Start to showing, you'll see who's sealed and who's not. I said.